The shocking truth, why Paul called himself a slave at midnight too real to ignore. It was one of those nights when the air hung heavy with secrets. A midnight chill creeped through the empty streets, amplifying the gentle rustle of leaves. Paul stood alone beneath a flickering street lamp, shadows dancing wildly around him, reflecting his inner turmoil. The haunting echo of his voice pierced the silence as he whispered, "I'm a slave." No one else was around to hear, yet those words loomed larger than life. What could make a man utter such a line in the dark? His eyes darted like fireflies under the lamplight, haunted by memories that threatened to consume him. They say every town holds a secret, and this town was no different. Local legends spoke of whispers from the past, twisted truths wrapped in mystery. People claimed the woods nearby were alive, filled with spirits of those who couldn't break their chains, forever trapped. It sent shivers down spines, yet people begged to know more, their curiosity stronger than fear. As Paul turned to leave, a sudden gust of wind howled through the trees, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The sensation gripped him a tight chest, a lump in his throat. He felt something besides the chill, it was almost a calling. Could it be the memory of stories passed down, tales of oppression and strength? He was carrying something heavy. But what? The scent of rain lingered in the air, thickening the tension. Cars sped past, oblivious to the drama unfolding beneath the streetlight where shadows played tricks on the mind. A rat scurried across the road, causing Paul to jump. It was a moment of startling clarity amidst the chaos. He wasn't alone in his fight, there were unseen forces, beckoning him to uncover something he couldn't yet grasp. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But there was no time to dwell on those thoughts. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, her face pale and worn with worry. "Paul," she shouted, her voice trembling. "You mustn't speak of that. They're listening." Fear gripped him, a fresh wave washing over him. He squinted, trying to read her expression. Was she an ally or an enemy? The air thickened with tension, and Paul felt it in his veins. It was a race against time. Instinctively, he took a step back, but his heart hammered in his chest. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Her eyes were wide with urgency. "They don't want the truth to come out. It will ruin everything." The words hung heavy in the air, promising revelations yet to be uncovered. Would he dare to dive deeper into this mystery? Could he risk it all for a truth that could change everything? As the night deepened, he felt the chains of destiny pulling him towards something he never anticipated. Paul's breath quickened. In that moment, the darkness around him transformed from mere shadows to something palpable, a living entity that pressed close, urging him to listen. The woman, her name escaped him, but fear filled her eyes. Stepped forward, her gaze darting as if sensing unseen watchers lurking in the night. "Why are they listening?" he pressed. This could be the catalyst. Whatever burden Paul carried, it was demanding to be unveiled. "Because you know," she stated, her voice trembling but resolute. "You've touched the truth, and they can't let you speak it." A cold wave of realization washed over him. He had stumbled into something far more significant than he had ever known. The weight on his heart felt heavier, a crushing reminder of secrets hidden beneath the town's veneer. "Who are they?" he asked, his voice breaking with trepidation. "They," she hesitated, glancing around as if expecting figures to emerge from the shadows, "are the ones controlling the stories, the narratives that keep us in line. They're everywhere and nowhere. And they will stop at nothing to maintain their grip." Paul felt a thrill shoot through his veins. The darkness that once loomed with dread now beckoned him like a siren. There was potential in exposing these hidden truths, and paradoxically, perhaps even freedom. "Please," the woman urged, "you have to listen. I know things that can guide you. But if you choose to pursue this path, you must be ready for the consequences." A shot of determination pierced his fear. "Tell me." She hesitated again, her expression torn. "I can't do this here. There are eyes everywhere. We need to go to the old mill. It's been abandoned for years, but it's safe. I'll explain everything there." Paul nodded, feeling a sense of urgency spiral within him. Shadows flickered with each movement, alive with unspoken history that seemed to echo in his bones. He turned to follow her, adrenaline coursing through his body, the promise of truth igniting something inside him. The old mill loomed ahead as they approached, thick vines coiling around crumbling bricks like forgotten memories. He could feel a chill twist in his stomach as they stepped inside. The air was heavy with dust and the weight of untold stories. It felt like stepping into a time capsule, remnants of lives once lived whispering in the silence. "Listen carefully," she whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the vast emptiness. "You're not the only one. Many have felt the chains, and some have tried to break free suddenly." A sound shattered the stillness, a sharp crack, like thunder in the distance. Paul's heart raced. That wasn't just the remnants of the mill settling, it was something more menacing. What was that? He breathed, scanning the darkness, every instinct screaming that they weren't alone. "Stay close," she whispered urgently, her eyes wide. "We need to move." Instinctively, Paul reached for her arm, gripping her firmly. The shadows seemed to close in tighter as a low, ominous growl echoed through the mill, vibrating down to his very core. With a surge of panic, he turned back to her. "We have to go, now." But just as they turned to make their escape, a figure stepped from the darkness, eyes glinting like predatory stars. The air thickened with a palpable danger. This wasn't simply about secrets anymore, it was about survival. "Who are you?" Paul demanded, his voice shaky yet firm. The figure smiled, and the corners of the room seemed to darken further. "You've meddled in things you don't understand. Perhaps it's time someone educated you." As the chill enveloped him, he felt the weight of chains tightening both around his heart and fate. But beneath the rising tide of fear, a question hung sharp in the air. What truth was worth fighting for, and what price would it demand from him? The figure stepped fully into the dim light, revealing a face that seemed both familiar and foreign, twisted with a knowing smirk. Paul's heart pounded in his chest. "What do you want?" He spat, frustration blending into fear. "Want? Oh, no, my dear boy. It's not about what I want," the figure replied, his voice a silky whisper that seemed to curl around them like smoke. "It's about what you're going to become." He took a step closer, and the shadows seemed to writhe at his command. "You've glimpsed the truth, and now you must decide whether you're willing to embrace it." "Embrace what?" Paul shot back, bewilderment grappling with a growing sense of dread. The mill stood silent but trembled beneath the weight of unspoken histories, and the air felt thick with tension. The woman beside him took a shaky breath. "Paul, we need to listen. This isn't just empty words. He holds pieces of what has been hidden from us. We can't turn back now." "But what if it means risk?" Paul's voice dipped, caught between the pull of knowledge and the fear of what lay ahead. The figure's presence felt suffocating, a tangible pressure pressing against his chest. "Risk is just a word to those who've never tasted the shackles of control," the figure laughed, his eyes sparkling with cruel amusement. "You think your life is your own? That every choice you make is free? It's time to wake up. You're already a prisoner of the stories they've written for you." Anger surged up in Paul like fire. "No. I refuse to accept that. I deserve to live honestly. I deserve truth." "Ah, but truth is a double-edged sword, isn't it?" The figure leaned in, his face now obscured by shadows. "Once you know, you can never unknow, and they will come for you. Just like they came for the others. Paul felt an icy finger trace his spine. He thought of the whispers in the night, the warnings that had haunted him. Others? What do you mean? The figure waved his hand dismissively. You're not the first to learn of the hidden chains. Many have tried to break free. Some are in hiding, others well, let us just say they learned a painful lesson. What happened to them? Paul asked, his stomach churning. The woman beside him shifted, fear etched deep into her features. They are the shadows you hear, the ones trapped in the stories that keep repeating. They watched, and now they linger, scattered across the very town you hold dear. He tilted his head, eyes gleaming with malice. They're trapped because of choices made long ago, choices that kept them safe until they weren't. Reality crashed down hard, the weight of what he faced plunging into his gut. I won TB them. He declared, defiant, arms crossed tightly. Take your threats and leave. Oh, young man, it's not a threat, it's a promise, the figure retorted, voice honey-sweet yet laced with venom. You're already marked. The moment you questioned the silence, you signed your fate. Now, the only question that remains is how far you are willing to go to uncover the truth and survive. The woman beside him quaked, her hand tightening around his arm. We need to leave, Paul. Now. But the figure merely chuckled, the sound rolling through the mill like thunder. Good luck escaping the darkness. It's never as far away as you think. With that, he melted back into the shadows, leaving an unsettling silence. The darkness yawned around them, thick and hungry, as Paul felt the energy in the air shift. Run! She urged, and with that, they dashed towards the exit. But even as they fled, a creeping sensation lightened the corners of Paul's mind. What if the darkness was more than just a physical threat? What if it had already seeped into the very fabric of his being, waiting to claim him? As they burst outside into the cold night air, the moon hung high, a lone witness to the chaos within. But one thought kept circling in his mind, louder than the growl that had growled before. Was this all just the prelude to something far worse? What had he truly awakened? The chill night air slapped Paul in the face, flooding his lungs with icy reality. Heart racing, he turned to the woman beside him, whose terrified eyes reflected the moonlight and confusion swirling in the night. What is happening? Who was that? Just keep moving. She urged, her voice breaking, dragging him along the worn path away from the mill. Each step felt like he was running from a ghost, shadows stretching behind them as if to grasp their retreating forms. A glance back confirmed the darkness had not followed, at least not visibly. But the unease wrapped around Paul tighter with every stride. We need to find somewhere safe, he gasped, desperation cracking his voice. Safe? Does that even exist anymore? She shot back, panic spilling over. He made it clear we're already in danger. Paul gritted his teeth. He couldn't buckle under fear. We can't just keep running. We need to figure out what he meant, about the others, the chains. The word chains echoed loudly in his mind, a jarring reminder of the figure's ominous warning. As they hurried through the empty streets, the dim lights of the town blinked like stars in a blackened sky. How could this place hold the secrets of those who vanished? And why did it feel like the very walls were closing in on him? His skin prickled, sensing he was no longer alone. Paul, please listen to me. She stopped abruptly, grabbing his arm. Her breath came in quick gasps, and her eyes widened with fear. I've heard the stories too. I thought they were just tales, but now, I don't know. What stories? About those who dared to dig too deep, the ones who disappeared, she said, her voice a whisper, thick with dread. They say they're still here, wandering, trapped between worlds. A cold breath of wind gusted past, sending a shiver down his spine. He thought of the figure's twisted smile. Trapped? What does that even mean? Like echoes, she said, her fingers trembling against his arm. Their fears feeding the darkness. Those who search for the truth pay the price. Paul felt the words pierce through him like ice shards. You said they were hiding. Who are they hiding from? Before she could reply, the silence of the neighborhood shattered. A sound echoed, distant but closing in a low growl thrumming through the air, rising in volume, sheet like a whispering chant. "Do you hear that?" he asked, straining to focus. "It's them," she breathed, eyes darting. "We have to go." But the growl morphed, shifting into a cacophonous laughter, chilling their veins. Shadows flickered and danced across the walls, shadows twisting into grotesque forms. They were no longer alone, the darkness had brought company. "Run!" Paul shouted, pulling her along as he sprinted for a nearby alley. A sudden blast of wind kicked up behind them, heavy with whispers and taunts that clawed at his mind. "Do you really think you can escape?" A voice crooned from the shadows, oozing with malicious glee. "You ventured into the darkness alone before." They dashed into the narrow passageway just as something brushed past them, knocking against the bricks with a sickening thud. Breathing hard, Paul glanced back, the fear in his throat thick as fog. Everything expanded, the alleys spiraled out, pulling them into a labyrinth of despair. "Hold my hand," he yelled, but as he reached out, she hesitated, glancing nervously at a dark corner. "We can't split up." The shadows squirmed, coiling around them like serpents, whispering secrets that gnawed at Paul's sanity. He could feel his resolve weaken under their weight, the panic igniting questions that paralyzed him. What had he set into motion? What powers lurked just beyond the edges of reality? As they sprinted deeper into the night, a terrifying realization dawned. What awaited them was not merely darkness but something far worse, a brutal truth veiled beneath layers of betrayal and choices long forgotten. With every step forward, the line between safety and ensnarement blurred, and Paul knew in that fleeting moment, they were not alone, not by a long shot. "Paul, look! They're on the ground!" she shouted, her voice strained. He followed her gaze, his heart dropping. A scrap of fabric fluttered in the breeze, ghostly white against the shadows. What lay ahead, Paul thought grimly as he knelt to grab it, urging danger into the open. What did it mean for them? And that question loomed larger. What other horrors awaited them in their desperate search? The moment Paul picked up the scrap of fabric, a jolt of fear shot through him. It was tattered, remnants of what might have been a shirt, but now it was stained and torn like the story it had to tell. He clenched it in his fist, and as he straightened, the shadows around them seemed to collectively hold their breath, waiting. "What is that?" she whispered, her voice barely reaching a pitch above the chaos that surrounded them. "I don't know," Paul replied hoarsely. The air was thick with anticipation, every nerve ending alive with instinctual dread. The fabric felt almost alive in his hand, warm against the cold. Glancing over at her, he saw the uncertainty etched on her face, mirroring his own turmoil. They were in deeper than he had ever imagined. "We have to keep moving. This might lead us to something, anything." She bit her lip, indecision flooding her eyes. "Or it could lead them straight to us." Before Paul could respond, the shadows swelled, pacing around them like hungry wolves. Their laughter echoed louder, an eerie chorus that sent chills racing down his spine. "Don't look back. Just run," he urged, seizing her hand with a newfound urgency. Together they tore through the alley, not daring to think about the consequences of their search. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, a ghastly silhouette blocking their path. The moonlight cast long, sinister shadows that distorted its features. It loomed larger than life, eyes glinting with an unnatural hunger. "Who dares tread in my territory?" it hissed, voice a smooth, chilling caress that curled around them. "Stay close," Paul hissed, pulling them both to the side as he tried to sidestep the figure, but it moved fast, a predator in full pursuit. Fleeing like frightened children, the voice taunted. "You think finding a scrap will save you? You are already part of the game." His chest tightened, struggling to breathe against the weight of their predicament. "What game? What do you want from us?" he shouted as they pressed on, heart racing. The figure laughed again, but this time, it transformed, splitting into multiple shadows that surrounded them, each giggling like twisted souls dancing on their own graves. "Together, we belong," they chorused, voices overlapping as if a sinister choir came alive in the depths of the night. Paul felt an overwhelming pressure, the pulse of a malevolent energy wrapping around him. "Paul! We have to find a way out," she urged, her grip tightening around his wrist that he led her on without having a clue where they were heading, feeling the shadows snapping at their heels. Each twist and turn made their escape more desperate, time slipping away like sand through his fingers. He could feel eyes watching them, the weight of their collective gaze heavy and accusing. Then, as they reached an intersection, Paul stopped. Before them lay an old, decrepit house, its windows dark and foreboding. "Are you crazy?" she whispered, panic flaring in her eyes. "That's where they'll find us." "But it's a place to hide," he insisted, "and maybe we can find answers inside." The shadows flickered, hesitating at the threshold, like waves crashing against a shore before receding. Paul breathed out a shaky breath, the decision hanging heavy in the air. "This could be our only chance," he said, praying she would trust him. With one last glance to their pursuers, she nodded, and they plunged into the darkness of the house, desperate for refuge. Inside, the stale air swirled around them, thick with secrets. Dust motes danced in the faint light that filtered through the cracks in the walls. Paul could feel the weight of history in every splintered floorboard and peeling wall, but they were not alone. A sound echoed from the back of the house, a low thud, followed by a whisper chilling and familiar. "Welcome back, Paul." He froze, the older voice wrapping around him like a vice. It was a name he recognized but wished he didn't. "Someone's here," he whispered, fear flooding his veins. A figure stepped forward from the shadows, half hidden in the darkness, face obscured. "You've returned to join the others," it said, sinister amusement filling its tone. Paul's breath caught in his throat. What does it mean to join the others? And before he could process another thought, the echoing laughter began again, reverberating through the house, engulfing them in a powerful grip of the unknown. What truth awaited them in this forsaken space? The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing features twisted into a smile that sent a shudder down Paul's spine. Shadows clung to it like a cloak, biting at the edges of its form. He could only make out fluorescent glimmers in its eyes, burning with a strange intensity that felt all too familiar. "Do you remember the games we played?" the figure crooned softly. "Who are you?" Paul demanded, his voice steadier than he felt. He could feel the pulse of her fear beside him, but he couldn't let it show. "Not now," the figure chuckled, a sound that echoed off the walls, unsettling and mocking. "You've forgotten, haven't you? You left, but the game never ended. You can't escape what you are." "What I am?" Paul spat back. "I'm nothing like you." The figure lurched closer, its breath sour and thick. "Oh, sweet Paul. But you've always been a part of this world. Every one of your fears, your struggles. They feed my existence. Don't you see? It's all connected." A wave of confusion washed over him as memories flickered like distant stars. Faces from his past twisted into shapes, morphing into strangers and loved ones alike. Desperation hazed his mind. "No, what do you want from us?" It threw back its head, laughing as if revealing a long-held secret. "You think the others are mere shadows? They are your kin, your truths. To join is to embrace your story. You can't escape it, it's woven into your very being." She stepped forward, the fear in her eyes filling with rage. "This isn't a game. We want to be part of your twisted story." "Ah, but you already are. You think you're here to hide?" "No, my dear. You're lured by the darkness and the pull of fate. You'll understand soon enough." Suddenly, Paul felt a surge, a roar of memories crashing against him like tidal waves. Visions of lost friends and forgotten faces haunted his thoughts. The gentle laugh of a child. The tears of a mother. He staggered, clutching her for support. "What is happening?" she cried, panic rising in her voice as she glanced around. The shadows writhed closer, whispering secrets, and Paul found himself in their grasp, every word a stinging reminder of his past, of mistakes, of grief. "Stop!" he shouted, pushing against the heaviness in the air. And then, it hit him, a vivid image of his younger self, standing in this very house, playing games late into the night with friends, laughter echoing off the walls before darkness consumed them. "No, this can't be." The figure grinned wider, reveling in his realization. "You're right where you belong, Paul. Those games never truly ended. You've simply been in denial. But here is where the truth finds you." "Truth?" he snapped, desperation shaping his words. "You think this is truth? It's madness." The laughter flared once more, wild and unrestrained. "Madness is merely a shadow of truth lurking ever so close. You will join the others. You'll see the beauty in the chaos." A shiver gripped them both. Paul shook his head, fighting back the memory, the impending pull of despair. They had to escape this house. A decision crystallized in his mind, one desperate chance to break free. He caught her eye, urgency sparking between them. "We need to get out of here." Together, they turned, racing through the darkened interior, shadows screeching behind them as the walls seemed to close in. "You can't run from what you are," the figure called out, its voice echoing like a warning. As they burst through a door to the backyard, a sliver of moonlight greeted them, illuminating the night but also revealing the path ahead, a garden overgrown with thorns and shadows. In the distance, a shimmering outline of what looked like a doorway swam into view, pulsing with a light that beckoned to them. "That way!" he yelled, the urgency spiking his adrenaline, but as they dashed toward the light, whispers grew louder, momentarily drowning out the chaos of their escape. "Join us, Paul, there's only one way out." Paul stumbled, heart racing, as he pulled her along with him. They couldn't stop now, but uncertainty gnawed at him. What waited in that light? And just as they reached the threshold, the laughter echoed again, bathing them in shadowy resignation. "Join us or be lost forever." With every ounce of strength, Paul pushed forward, not looking back as the shadows swirled behind them, hungry and relentless. But what lay beyond that doorway? Will this escape lead them to freedom, or deeper into the darkness that clung to his very soul? They plunged through the doorway, the glimmering light enveloping them like a warm embrace, shocking in its brilliance. Paul's breath hitched, the air thick with anticipation. They emerged on the other side, but to his horror, the shimmering light began to distort, revealing a new landscape, a twisted mockery of the world he thought he'd known. The surroundings shifted, morphing into an eerily familiar playground, a relic of their childhood days. The swings creaked, rusted chains resonating with unease, and the merry-go-round spun at a disorienting pace, whispering forgotten secrets. Yet the colors were muted, a gray hue hung over everything, each sound thick with the weight of dread. "What is this place?" she asked, her face pale, eyes wide with uncertainty. "I think it's where we used to play," Paul stammered, memories flooding back, each one painful, like barbed wire tangled in his mind. But before he could delve deeper into nostalgia, the laughter echoed again, this time more sinister. "You wanted to escape, didn't you? But this is your truth. The games you played, the friends you lost, they are here with you. Can you feel them?" Visions darted across his eyes, shadowy figures flitting in and out of focus, their faces twisted into expressions of joyful madness. He could almost hear their laughter ringing in his ears, and yet, they felt so far away. "Paul! Focus!" she pleaded, clutching his arm, desperation clawing at her voice. "We need to find a way out." "What do we do?" The cruel laughter deepened, resonating from all directions. "You can't escape who you really are. This playground is a prison of your own making, and you fed it with your fears." "No!" he shouted, gripping her tighter. "We want to be part of this. But the shadows seemed to pulse with life around them, wrapping them in a suffocating embrace. The swings began to sway violently, invisible hands pushing them, laughter echoing louder. Join the game. Embrace your darkness. Stop. Paul barked, feeling the panic clawing at his throat. We will not play. The shadows laughed, shaking as they danced closer, wrapping around his ankles like creeping vines. Oh, sweet Paul, your refusal only tightens the chains. You're the master of your own demise. Suddenly, the figures twisted into grotesque forms, horrid caricatures of friends he'd lost. They reached out to him, pleading, taunting, their mouths moving soundlessly. A chill sunk into his bones. No, he murmured, trying to pull her free from their grasp. But just then, a flash of light burst between the trees, parting the darkness momentarily. Paul squinted, recognizing the shape of the doorway from before, glimmering like a beacon of hope. It's there! He shouted, instinct turning over fear. They dashed toward the light, the laughter ramping to a fever pitch, shadows clawing at their legs, the weight of despair pressing down on them. Behind them, the figure manifested again, a dark silhouette against the light, eyes glimmering with malice. Join us, Paul. Embrace your fears, or remain shackled forever. Every step felt like pulling through thick mud, the whispers swelling into a whirlwind of doubt. But this was their chance, the only way to break free from the churning chaos that tethered them to the past. Don't look back. He urged, feeling the weight of regret and grief creeping in, but there was no time for that. They surged forward, pushing through the shadows, desperation fueling their flight, and as they dove into the blinding light, Paul felt a tearing sensation, severing the chains binding him to the lost souls behind him. They burst through, landing on soft soil beyond the threshold, gasping for breath. But the cacophony didn't cease, it bled into their new reality, the shadows left clawing at the edges of their vision. The escape had brought them to safety, but at what cost? What have we unleashed? She whispered, glancing back at the doorway, flickering ominously. They had escaped the playground, but the laughter, oh, it still danced on the wind, obscured yet always near. A hollow silence fell, tinged with dread. In this moment, their decisions became shadows of their own making. We need to find a way to stop this for good, Paul breathed, a cold sweat breaking out across his brow, and as they moved deeper into the unknown, the voice echoed once more, a distant roar rippling through the air. The game has only just begun. The ground shifted beneath their feet, new dread creeping in like a fog. Paul glanced around, searching for familiarities, yet the landscape felt as alien as the last. Dark trees loomed overhead, clutching at the sky with gnarled branches that seemed to reach out like grasping hands, desperate and violent. Shadows flitted past, forms he couldn't quite make out taunted his peripheral vision, just beyond the reach of clarity. We should move, he stammered, his heart racing. She nodded, her eyes wide and wild, echoing his urgency. But even as they stepped away from the doorway, the lingering clamor of laughter threaded through the air like an insistent whisper. What if it knows we escaped? What if it follows us? Her voice shook, barely above a whisper, panic tightening its grip around them like a vice. Stop it. We can't think like that, Paul snapped, trying to drown out his own fear. We have to keep moving. There has to be a way to sever its grasp to make it all disappear. As they trudged deeper into the trees, a heavy silence enveloped them, punctuating every footfall with the threat of impending doom. The echo of their own breaths seemed overly loud in the desolate air. They broke through the drooping limbs into a small clearing, overgrown with twisted roots that fought for life against the damp earth. In the center stood a rusted merry-go-round, just like the one from the playground. It was a grotesque reminder, a link to the past that clawed at Paul's memory, taunting him. What is this? She breathed, inching closer. How is it here? Maybe it's a marker, a symbol, he murmured, feeling bile rise in his throat. It's mocking us. Reminding us of everything we tried to leave behind. Suddenly, the merry-go-round began to turn, the metal groaning under the weight of echoes long forgotten. Paul's heart raced, memories flashing like bursts of lightning, laughter, joy, and then loss. From the center, a figure emerged, older, dressed in remnants of clothing from their childhood. You can't escape, Paul. This place is a realm of your own making. You wanted to play, you wanted to run, and now look where you are, she crooned, voice slithering like smoke. Paul stumbled back, the familiarity of her face sobering him, filling him with a paralyzing fear. Rachel? Her smile was unsettling, an empty gesture that twisted in his gut. They were right, you know. There is no escape. You are bound to us forever. No. He shouted, desperation coursing through him. We were kids. We never meant for it to end like this. Ah, but you did. You sealed the curse with your laughter. With each fleeting moment, you fed the darkness. The shadows coalesced around them again, swirling in a tempest of unease. Each gust of wind whispered Paul's deepest fears, fears he'd buried long ago. What do you want from me? He cried, trembling. Rachel tilted her head, eyes glinting with something sinister. For you to accept who you are. You wear chains, Paul, and they clink louder at midnight. What does that even mean? It means you are a prisoner of your own creation. The game has begun, and you cannot simply walk away. The ground shook, reverberating with her words. Laughter echoed again, but now it was joined by something darker, more insidious. The shadowy figures poured into the clearing, their laughter mingling with anguished cries. I want to play with you. He yelled, terror pooling in the pit of his stomach. But in that moment, the realization struck him this was his truth, and avoidance wouldn't set him free. What is our next move? She asked, urgency threading through her voice. Paul looked to the shadows closing in. He took a breath, grounding himself in the moment, heart pumping hard. We confront it. We must face our fears, the ones buried deep, if we're to find a way out. As they stood together, engulfed by darkness and echoes of haunted laughter, determination flickered inside him, small but fierce. And then, with a terrible burst, the shadows lunged forward, a tide of chaos barreling toward them, leaving no room for retreat. Accept your truth. Rachel's voice shrieked, jarring through the madness. But as uncertainty seized him, Paul realized he was already dancing on the edge of his own despair. What would he have to confront to break free, to be the master of his own fate? The ground stopped shaking. The shadows paused, as if they were waiting. Face it, Paul. Your fate begins now. The shadows pulsed around Paul, thick and black like ink spilled across a page. His heart drummed in his chest, each thud a reminder of the breathless tension that hung in the air. Rachel's face twisted in a mixture of terror and determination, yet he felt the pull of darkness beckoning him deeper into dread. Now! She cried, tugging at his sleeve, shattering his paralysis. They ran, their feet pounding the ground, desperation fueling each step. Shadows slithered at their heels, whispering taunts, echoing the very doubts that nagged at Paul's conscience. Don't look back. Rachel urged, her voice higher, tinged with panic. We can't let it catch us. But the laughter so familiar, so haunting followed them, wrapping around them like damp fog. It crept into Paul's mind, pulling on memories he wished to forget. He stumbled, a vision bursting forth, his childhood, the carefree moments before everything became something other than joy. The faces of his friends faded, replaced by the twisted specters of those who never truly escaped. Push it away. He yelled, clenching his fists until his nails bit into his palms. It's just a trick. We're stronger than this. Rachel nodded, her fear contorting into resolve. Just keep running. Don't stop. But suddenly the ground ripped apart beneath them. A chasm gaped wide, splitting the earth, as if the world itself sought to swallow them whole. Paul stumbled, caught off guard, and Rachel reached for him, pulling him back just in time. Her grip was strong, together, they steadied themselves. What now? She gasped, panting heavily. Their eyes darted to the edges of the fissure, where writhing shadows seemed to beckon from the depths. "Find something. Anything!" Paul shouted, scanning the clearing. He spotted a jagged rock, sharp and menacing, half buried beneath the soil. "That! We can use it." While Rachel retrieved the stone, Paul took a step back from the yawning abyss. The laughter grew heavier, a cacophony of distorted voices surrounding them, amplifying their fears. "What does it want from us?" he shouted against the wall of sound. "It wants us to surrender." Rachel's voice rang out, strong and clear. "To succumb to our own darkness." Fueled by her words, Paul held his breath, focusing on the shadows racing toward them. He stepped forward, thrusting the rock into the edge of the chasm. "We control this. We're not the prisoners it wants us to be." The shadows writhed in anger, their laughter warping into snarls, filling him with icy fear. They twisted around him, pulling on his mind, dragging him toward despair. "You think you're in control?" one hissed, its voice smooth and chilling. "You created this. We are merely products of your imagination." "No!" he shouted, shaking his head frantically. "You're wrong. I don't have to play by your rules." The shadows hesitated, their movements slowing as his defiance sparked within him. Paul felt something shift, a crack in his own resolve. Rachel stood firmly at his side. "You're not alone. We'll break this chain, Paul. Together." With renewed resolve, they stepped closer to the chasm. "What must we face?" Paul shouted into the seething darkness. "Show yourself." The shadows recoiled, their forms coiling back, whispering secrets too sinister to articulate. In that instant, Paul understood, it was himself he needed to confront. He had to accept the parts he despised, the fear, the guilt, the pain. "Look! There!" Rachel pointed to a figure emerging from the shadows, a reflection of himself, twisted and grim. This version of him appeared broken, trapped in a cycle of anguish, shrouded in the shadows of regret. Paul's breath hitched. "No, no. I can't be that." But as the figure stepped closer, he felt a sorcery pull him in, jerking free the very essence of his past. It raised a hand, revealing chains glistening in the dim light beneath the shadows, clinking softly as they bound it. "Unless you let go you will always be a prisoner," it whispered, voice dark, echoing in the pit of Paul's stomach. "What if I break free?" he asked, fear filling his veins, but a flicker of hope ignited in his chest. "Then you will finally see the truth." As the shadow began expanding, consuming the clearing, Paul felt the weight of his past pressing down, yet within that suffocation, a spark ignited. The moment was here, the reckoning was unavoidable. Will he dare to confront who he really is? Will this be the moment he breaks the chains for good? The shadows loomed closer, ready to engulf him, but he stood stronger, filled with determination. The air crackled with energy. Time to face it all. Paul stood at the precipice, a swirling sea of shadow writhing at his feet. The weight of his past hung like a dark cloud overhead, but he refused to back down. "I am not a prisoner," he shouted, his voice cutting through the din. The shadowy reflection of himself before him flickered with rage. "Then face it." The shadow hissed, the chains around its wrists clinking ominously as it lunged forward, its eyes aflame with pain and anger. "Embrace the darkness you hide from." Paul felt the shadows encroaching around him, whispers clawing at his mind, threatening to draw him back into memory and past mistakes. But deep within, he ignited a burning resolve. "I've lived under the weight of guilt and fear for too long. I am ready to break free." "What do you think that means?" The shadow sneered, its voice dripping with scorn. "Face the truth, Paul. You've buried it deep. You think rejecting me will save you?" Paul clenched his fists, feeling warmth spread through him as he faced the malevolence. "You don't define me. I define my own identity. You're just a ghost of the past, a fragment of shame." His words resonated, pushing back against the creeping darkness that he stepped forward, heart thundering in his chest as memories flooded his mind. Laughter mingled with tears, friends loved and lost. They were both pain and power. I won't run anymore. I will embrace my truth, all its light and dark, he declared, grounding himself in the moment. The shadow hesitated, as if stunned. You think that's enough? It whispered, unsettling eyes narrowing, a trace of fear flickering within it. Yes. Paul boomed, I accept who I am. And I refuse to be shackled by what happened in the past. He took another determined step, pushing against the shadows swirling around him that seemed to pulse in fury, the cacophony of voices boiling over. With a surge of adrenaline, he charged at the shadow, gripping the rock tightly in his right hand. Memories whirled around him as the external chaos roared louder, but he pressed on. You're not my past. You're just fear. I cast you out. With one decisive strike, he smashed the rock against the ground, sending shockwaves that rippled through the dark. A blinding light enveloped everything, swallowing the shadows whole. The laughter and whispers were silenced, no longer were they binding him. In that moment, Paul felt a breath of fresh air, a golden light, broken chains, fallen darkness scattering like ashes. He stood there, shaking, as the dissipating shadows pulled reluctantly back into the earth, leaving only an echo of uncertainty behind. Paul looked toward Rachel, her eyes wide with shock and relief. Did we do it? She asked, breathless, stepping closer. We did. We faced what haunted me, he replied, chest heaving with exhaustion yet filled with an overwhelming sense of freedom. And around them, the air began to shimmer with newfound clarity. The landscape shifted, shadows transformed into shapes of light and solace. The playground melted away, replaced by vibrant hues that sang of hope and rediscovery. They glanced at each other, a bond forged in fire and struggle. It's not the end, she murmured, a smile breaking through the remnants of fear. It's the beginning of something new. They walked towards the horizon, stepping through the remnants of what once bound them, holding hands, casting away chains of betrayal and soul-crushing fears. Together, Paul said with conviction, warmth stretching through him as the light pulled them forward, we can tell our truths and fight for others still trapped. As they ventured toward the light, they felt the pulse of life blooming with promise. They were no longer prisoners, but free, ready to share the wisdom of their journey and the strength of their shared truth with the world. And in that awakening, Paul found a purpose far beyond himself. Now the true challenge begins. They carried the responsibility of freedom, and the path ahead was theirs to forge. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, and let us know how this journey impacted you. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this conclusion. Let us keep this community thriving.